in this video, we are going to be talking about marine mammals, which is a huge favorite. We are going to first go through some of the key concepts that we'll be talking about in this video, and I will scroll through these quickly, but you can come back and pause later as needed. So with marine mammals, they have a lot of shared characteristics. They do have insulating body hair. They are homeothermic, meaning they like to have a constant body temperature, and they have different ways to regulate that. They produce milk for their young through mammary glands, and their babies are in a placenta, so they're considered a placental mammal. And they eat at various levels of various trophic levels, meaning they are eating all kinds of different food out there, not just say fish. They're eating on all levels of the trophic system. So sea otters are a beloved fan favorite of the marine mammals. They are here on the California coast. You can see them at Morro Bay or Monterey Bay, all the way up to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. You can view them straight from land because they never go much further than about a mile from land. When they go to give birth, the female will come up onto the shoreline rocks and birth on land, and then the pup will immediately follow her out to sea. They do have a fin-like feet that helps them to kind of paddle. They have a thicker fur, and that helps them for insulation, and actually makes an air layer that keeps them warm like a bird almost for insulation. And they do have 5-fingered forelimbs and short erect ears. Here's a video on them from National Geographic Wild called Sea Otters Open Mollusks on Stone Anvils. So interesting. They actually have a hardened part on the front of their chest that they can take something as spiky as a sea urchin and break it open with a rock on their chest and eat the meat inside. And they don't feel pain from that because it's almost like a calloused over layer there that they don't have a sensation to. That makes them very, very important to their ecosystems, where they are considered a keystone species. Here in Southern California, we have very important kelp forests that create vital habitat for other species. And we do have a problem with urchins, which will go along the sea floor, and they will eat the bottom of the kelp. And when they do that, the kelp breaks off, floats to the top, and that really cool kelp forest is lost. Well, sea otters will actually dive down and they will eat a lot of urchins, and so they keep the kelp forest intact for a lot of other species. So they are considered a keystone species. They were hunted nearly to extinction, and populations right now are varying from about 1,000 to 3,000. Interesting, just one large bad storm or things like that can wipe out a few hundred at a time, but they are lightly can come back from those things, and they're kind of maintaining that population size. So here's a video from Monterey Bay Aquarium live sea otter cam. So this is their live sea otter cam that you can see. And then also a video from BBC Earth. Sea otters hold hands to survive dangers in the open ocean. This one is really cool. It shows that in some areas where they live, where there is glacier-like activity, when the glaciers break off in huge chunks, they can fall into the water and cause these massive sudden waves. And the sea otters, in order to survive that, because they live really close to land, like the shoreline, they will all link their little hands together so that there's a smaller chance that anyone will get lost in that huge wave that comes by. It's very, very cute. About winter time of year, like December to maybe March, you can see them in different places, even breeding, holding their babies and things. They eat about 25% of their food each day. They're very vocal and playful, and they like to be awake during the day and with each other in groups. Okay, polar bears are big gear shift here, but polar bears are also a favorite. They are top predators. They can be 9 feet long and 1,600 pounds. They also have 4 inches of body fat, so it doesn't bother them at all to be rolling in the snow and swimming in -50-degree water or in the air and living on shifting ice sheets. So they not only have a very dense underfur, but then they have a top layer of fur called their guard hair. So they've got the layer of fat and then 2 layers of hair to keep them warm. This is a really cool video from Discovery UK. There's a mother polar bear and her cub are coming out of hibernation, and it's really cute to see what they have to go through. So another video is from BBC Earth. Hungry polar bear ambushes a seal. So just as a warning, the polar bear is hunting this seal and will eat it in this video. But it shows how stealthy the polar bear will swim through the water, and it basically corners the seal because seals cannot move very well on land, like on the ice. It can't move very well on the ice. So the polar bear comes from the ocean side, blocking its only exit. And then as soon as the seal dives into the water, it grabs it and will eat it. So males will compete for available females. This is an awesome video from BBC Earth. The polar bears, a male and a female, meeting up and deciding whether or not they're good for each other to mate with. And so it's called Polar Bears Flirting with Each Other. And you can see their whole playful process as they're deciding if this is a good mate. So interesting, going back to the food though, they can eat, their stomachs can hold 154 pounds of food, and they can eat 10% of their body weight in just 30 minutes. Once they mate, they give birth usually to about 2 cubs each year, weighing 1 pound at a time. And the moms will stay with their babies for 3 years. Their biggest threat is climate change because it's shrinking their ice sheets where they can go and hunt these seals. They are considered endangered. In 1960, they were granted protection from the US, Russia, Canada, Norway, and Denmark, and now their numbers are about 40,000 in the world today. So the pinnipeds. The pinnipeds are the seals, sea lions, and walruses. They have seals, elephant seals, sea lions, walruses. They will eat fish and invertebrates like squid and octopus. They will go on land to give birth and molt, and they're predators are sharks, whales, and humans. So there are various characteristics. There are the eared seals, the true seals, and the walruses. So the main thing is that the eared seals have small external ears, which you can see on this guy, just little flap of ears. And then true seals, they do not have that. They have little ear holes, but not little flaps. This is another infographic that helps you tell the difference between the two. A California sea lion can kind of stand up erect, and it has a little bit of neck that is separate from its head. Its back flippers can rotate forward to be able to help it to walk, and its front fins are very strong to kind of be up and erect and walking. Whereas a seal, you do not see those ear flaps. It doesn't really have much of a neck. It's like it just is all like together. Their back fins are not well adapted at all, cannot help it to stand up. This is the most standing up you will see of a seal, and its front flippers are not really meant for land either. So sea lions you will see kind of moving around on land a little bit, where seals mostly are going to want to stay in the water because that is their main place. So pinniped characteristics are that they have very thick layers of fat. They have rounded heads. They have big brains and well-developed senses. This little guy that's coming up to the camera here, you can see those little ear flaps right there, which means that this one would be a sea lion. And their 2 pairs of limbs are modified into flippers for swimming. So for swimming and diving, there's different adaptations for diving. They will actually exhale before diving so that they aren't so buoyant and don't have to work so hard to dive deep. And when they dive, they will actually slow their metabolism. They slow their heart rate. This is called bradycardia, and this happens in a lot of other animals that have to use the same function. They also will redistribute their blood to only their vital organs. Compared to humans, they have a lot more oxygen in their muscles and thicker blood. They have a larger heart. And this is a great video here that explains more about that from BBC Studios, How Marine Mammals Survive Underwater. So check that out if you have time. Reproduction in pinnipeds is that they do congregate to different breeding places, and they tend to give birth about every 2 years. Some are polygynous, meaning they have multiple females, and some of the males will actually establish strong territories and will have a harem of up to 12 females. Now, males that are not invited to that space in many cases, but not all species, but in many cases, those males just kind of tend to live out in the water until, they live out their life or they are eaten in some way by some other creatures. So female will birth their pups from the previous year, but interestingly, she will often mate with multiple males, and one set of sperm will fertilize the egg, but using different hormones, her body actually waits to implant that embryo until she will be able to time that out and go to her birthing place, breeding grounds, to go and give birth to that baby. There's some live viewing of the northern elephant seals. I totally recommend you look at this. It's amazing, especially from about November, December till about February. You can see these harems and the males fighting on land of the northern elephant seal, which are just massive, massive animals. This is a great video from Palomar Films, Larger Than Life, the story of the northern elephant seal. You can learn a little bit about how they were nearly hunted to extinction, and there just happened to be a tiny population in Mexico on Guadalupe Island. Thank goodness the Mexican government made the decision to protect these guys, and now they have expanded their range again all the way up through California to Año Nuevo in California, and they have a population of about 100,000. So they can dive for about 2 hours, and they slow their heart rate to 6 beats per minute. The way the females stay on land the entire time that they're weaning their baby, it's all just fascinating. And there's even some babies that will you can actually go and see them birthing in Año Nuevo. There's viewing platforms, but when the babies come out, like some seagulls will come down and eat like the afterbirth and things like that. The babies immediately start nursing. Sometimes there's babies that will actually come and push out the newborn baby and come eat off the mom, and she can't really do anything about it. Those babies are actually called super weaners because they won't get weaned off of multiple females, so they call them super weaners, which is really interesting. You can learn a lot about that by visiting Año Nuevo. Totally recommend that. So in pinnipeds, they're usually pregnant, have gestation for about 1 year with that delayed implantation of the egg. So the lactation can vary. So this is how long the mother is nursing the pup. So in icy or colder places, the mom tries to speed the nursing along. They have very, very high levels of fat and protein, and they will try to wean that baby in maybe 2 weeks. Whereas some other species, and get off the ice. That's the main thing. Let's get off the ice to the safety of the water. In other areas where that is not as big a concern, they will nurse for a lot longer than that. So eared seals are the sea lions. They have a coarse coat of nothing but hair. They're very, very social and like to hang out in groups. And their coats were prized on the fur market, and that's why they were hunted. Phocids, or the true seals, do not have ear, and this one you can see is missing the neck, not great at moving on land, wants to hang out in the water. They just move around on land by kind of dragging their bodies because their forelimbs are close to their head and have small hind limbs. They are only congregating during breeding season. The Phocids, the true seals, this is a video by Deep Marine Seas called Facts on the Harbor Seal. The harbor seal is maybe one of the most widely distributed marine mammals for around the world. Their pups do have a white coat, and that was highly sought after in fur markets to have a white seal coat. So a lot of the pups were actually killed for that. The leopard seal is the only Phocid acid that goes after like non-fish things. So it will go after like penguins or seabirds or other seals to make up its diet. And then elephant seals are the largest of all of these, and they have a huge proboscis or nose that hangs off, but I talked about them um, a minute ago, but that proboscis basically amplifies the sounds that they make. So then there's walruses. Walruses have these huge tusks at the front. I've seen them use these tusks before, almost like a pickaxe, where they want to pull themselves out of the ice. So they will dig that down into the ice and then use it to pull themselves up onto land. They lack external ears. The males can grow to 12 feet and 3,700 pounds. The females are a little bit smaller at 1,200 pounds. These tusks are actually extensions of their teeth, and one bull will tend to mate with up to 3 females and have different calves of different ages going on at the same time. So this is a video by National Geographic, a walrus pup's first swimming lesson, which is pretty cute. Okay, so the calves, when they're born, will stay with the mom for 4 to 5 years. These guys are found in the Arctic. They go for fish, crustaceans, mollusks, echinoderms. They're still hunted by native people who want them for meat and not their tusks. And this is a good video from Deep Marine Scenes called Facts the Walrus, where you can learn a little bit more. But we're going to move on to the sirens, which are the manatees and the dugongs. So they are order Sirenia, and they were named after the mythical sirens or mermaids that from Homer's Odyssey. This is what early boaters maybe thought when they saw mermaids in the shadows below the water. They were probably seeing dugongs or manatees, who are very friendly and willing to come near humans. So dugongs and manatees have different tails. Their bodies and forelimbs are like whales, and they have a tail fluke. They're very trusting, and they will actually go up to freshwater like estuaries and at the front ends of some small like river streams. So dugongs are strictly marine. They live in the Indian Ocean, North China Sea, and the Red Sea. They will actually have a notched tail or look like a whale fluked tail. You can see on the very edge of this video, which is called National Geographic Wild, the dugong, the oceans, vacuum cleaner from wild Egypt. These guys are strict vegetarian. They're just going to go through looking for seagrass. And of the dugongs, there is only one species left, and unfortunately, it really needs protection now because there are not many left. Okay, so manatees have a paddle tail on the back, whereas the other one had the notch. The dugongs had the notched tail. They're found in the northern U.S., in Brazil, in different rivers, in Africa, even in lakes and on the coast. So they can go in freshwater or saltwater, and the male will actually remain with the female until she gives birth, and the female gives birth to one calf after 11 months of being pregnant. They are strict vegetarians, and because they float right near the surface near coasts and they really like to be around humans and they're super friendly, they get run over by boats a lot. And the propellers of boats chop up their back and their head and kill them pretty quickly. So here's a video from National Geographic. Wild manatees are the sea cows of the coast, and here they are swimming over its favorite food source, which is just the sea grass. So Steller sea cow is an extinct relative of these guys. It was way more rotund than its relatives, and it was sought after people as a food source and just hunted to extinction. Being really friendly and having a great food source does not make it good for them, and they died. They were hunted to extinction. So the cetaceans are the whales that we're going to talk about. They actually have blubber to keep them warm. So water, the reason why they need blubber is water actually cools you off 50 to 100 times faster than air. The blowhead whale, has 20 inches of blubber, and a sperm whale has 5 to 7. That's a lot of blubber. In most cetaceans, they have a fully, they lack a neck, and in some of them, the vertebrae is actually fused there, so they can't move their head back and forth, up and down very much at all. So they do have tiny external ears and wax plugs to keep those ears so that they don't get flooded with water. They are hairless except for having a few on their head. They have nostrils at the front of their face when they are a baby in utero, but those nostrils just before birth actually migrate to the top of their head. They fuse into one blowhole, and then the whale can breathe out when it comes to the surface. It's really cool. They actually have a counter current exchange like circulatory system, and I'm going to talk about that here. If this was like the whale's fin, it's going to have warm blood that is coming from the core of the whale. And that warm blood is going to run very closely next to the different veins that are coming back in from the whale's fin, which is very cold. It's been out there in the thin flipper, and now it's very, very cold. So this warm blood that's coming from the core will pass a lot of its heat energy to the cold blood coming back in, so that it can give as much of its heat away to the blood vessels coming back into the core, and it doesn't have as much heat to lose to the water or the surface going back out. So this is called the counter current exchange system. So whales actually have small lungs compared to what you would expect, but their lungs are highly efficient. They can exchange 80 to 90% of the oxygen in their blood, whereas humans, we're only about 15 to 25% efficient. Their blowhole also, I want you to watch this GIF for a second. When whales surface, they will blow out this whole stream of like water and air. And in that, there will actually be some mucus, and researchers don't know for sure, but they think that mucus is actually binding to nitrogen, so that as the whale is breathing air back in, there's less nitrogen in the air, and that's actually contributing to them getting a diving illness that a lot of scuba diver humans are susceptible to, which is called the bends. When you get a lot of nitrogen in your body, you can get the bends. Well, whales have less nitrogen in their body because the mucus, when they blow out like this, their mucus is binding with that nitrogen, making them less susceptible to that. Also interesting, their lungs and rib cage will collapse really easily. This does not hurt them, but it will collapse so they can dive better underwater. Also, their alveoli in their lungs will also collapse. This forces the air to go out to the outer airways in their body instead of like hanging out in the lungs. That's another adaptation. They also slow their heart rate and their metabolism, but their heart rate will slow to 10% of norm when they are under the water and they shut off blood to vital organs. Another adaptation they have for diving is that their medulla oblongata is less sensitive to CO2, which is a poison to us. The CO2 is a poison, and when we have a buildup of that, our medulla oblongata kind of pushes us to go and breathe, that we have a huge urge to breathe. Whales are less sensitive to their medulla oblongata for CO2, and so they don't feel the urge to breathe out that CO2. The CO2 can hang out for a little bit until they're ready to blow it out. They also have large amounts of hemoglobin, which carries oxygen about twice as much as humans. And then they also have a lot of myoglobin, which is the oxygen that is held in the muscles. They have about 10 to 30 times as much as land animals. Another cool adaptation is they are not as affected by lactic acid buildup that we get, like sore muscles from vigorous exercise. So other adaptations for diving is that they have streamlined bodies, they have appendages that form flippers, and then they have this cool fluke-like tail to help be a paddle for diving. One of their cool behaviors is that they have a behavior called spy hopping, and this video from Chris Renninger, Orca's spy hopping, will show it's just where the whale emerges out of the water with just its head, checks everything else, looks around, and then goes back down. And they will do this to find food, to get their bearings, and for whatever other reasons that they have. So whales will also do breaching and sometimes even serial breaching, where they breach over and over and over again. This can be we don't know for sure why every animal has certain behavior, but it appears that it could be sometimes playful, sometimes to establish dominance, and sometimes it's been seen in repeated, like the serial breaching, when either a new member is coming in or one of the animals is leaving the group. Some of the other members will serial breach, maybe to express something about that member leaving or coming or going. Some of their other behaviors are moving different body parts and slapping the water with them. So they'll have a tail slapping, or and that's to mark their position or territory. They have a tail cocking, where they will go and hit their opponent with a tail. Um, the peduncle slap is actually where they raise their back whole half out of the water, and then they fall to the side. They'll like raise their whole rear end out of the water and just fall to the side. They have a tail slashing and swishing, which is the side to side motion. This one, the fluke up, fluke down, is waving the back tail. The flipper flapping is this sideways one that they take their side fin and they flap it on the water. I've actually seen this, and again, we don't know why for sure these animals are doing this. But when I observed this in Australia, there was a mother with her calf, and the calf was getting kind of bigger. And then the baby was acting very distressed and was flapping the water with its side flipper. And then within a minute or so, we saw that a large male had come up to the mother, and probably for breeding purposes, but we don't know that for sure. But it appeared that he was wanting to be in the area for breeding purposes, and it almost seemed like the baby was kind of bratting out like, no, this is my mom, get away, I'm not ready to not be the baby anymore. And it seemed to almost like, if I was to project my human emotions, that it was like a toddler brat fest, that no, I want to stay the little one. There's also pectoral stroking that happens, where the female and her baby will kind of stroke or rub each other with their fins as kind of a bonding type of thing. So in reproduction and development, baleen whales will mate and give birth in the same place every year and be pregnant for 10 to 13 months. Toothed whales will breed all year long, and they will be pregnant for 7 to 10 months. They have extremely rich milk, up to 50% pure fat, and then they will also have about 10% or more of protein, so the infant grows really rapidly. Specifically, the baby blue whales will double in size in 1 week, and on their 8th day they'll gain 200 more pounds. So this is a video by Story Animal giving birth, how a big whale is giving birth, and here you can see a variety of different whales being born, which is really cool. So there's 2 orders that we're going to talk about. The Mysticeti, which are the baleen whales, they do not have teeth, and the Odontoceti, which are the toothed whales, and they do have teeth. And so the toothed whales will feed on larger prey. I want to mention here that baleen whales don't feed on just plankton. They'll take in a lot of small organisms while they're feeding, some tiny fish and things like that. But toothed whales definitely go after larger prey. And here you can see an orca spy hopping. That orca will probably go and eat that seal, and he's just checking that out before, like, to find out his bearings. So the types of whales and how they're connected to each other evolutionarily, I was able to take a really cool video at in La Paz, Mexico, that I'm calling The Evolutionary History of Cetaceans by a docent at Museo de la Ballena in La Paz, Mexico. So she gave a great history of how whale evolution is believed to have occurred, and it shows some of the great work that is being done in Mexico on whales. So, baleen whales have enormous mouths with these huge baleen plates, which are long triangular shaped and they can be 1 to 4 meters long. They are made of a protein called keratin, which we have in like our hair and nails. And there's hundreds of these plates that are lined up near each other, and they are all protected by this underlip. So the whales will open their mouth and they'll allow a ton of water to get like krill or small fish in their mouth. And then they'll close their mouth to the underlip and then squirt out the remaining water. But the krill are all caught inside here. They can actually have about 10 tons, 20,000 pounds of krill in their stomach at once. It's unreal how much they can hold at once. Also, baleen whales have this amazing behavior where they can create these nets of bubbles. They swim around in very geometric, cool ways, sometimes even in groups, forming these bubble nets around prey that they want to eat. This confuses the prey, and the prey just sees a bunch of bubbles coming up and it gets scared. So it just stays in the center and then they come and feed off of it. Watch this video from University of Hawaii at Manoa. It's called Whale Bubble Net Feeding, documented by researchers in groundbreaking footage. I would say it's very, very cool and you should see it. So right whales and bowhead whales, they actually lack a dorsal fin. So when you look at them, there's no top fin, and that sometimes looks a little weird. Right whales actually sadly got their names from hunting because they were basically a very slow whale that stayed near the surface a lot. So when hunters saw it, they would point to it and say, "We found the right whale." And so that's how they were named the right whale, because it was the right whale to hunt, and they were hunted quite a bit. So they were very the females right now in the wild, there are more males than females left in the wild, which is a huge problem for the species, because there's not as enough females to breed right now. Right whales specifically, they would float when they were dead, and they were easy to cut up on the boat into pieces. The northern Atlantic right whale, there's only about 300 left. They eat copepods. The bowhead whale is the rarest of all of those, and it's near extinction. So this is a deep marine scenes facts Northern American right whale that I recommend you watch. So the rorquals, they are another type of baleen whale. They do actually have a dorsal fin. They're streamlined and very fast swimmers. The blue whale that we currently have on Earth can grow to be what scientists think is the largest animal that maybe has ever lived on Earth. However, we're not allowing enough time for these whales to get to their full size before they're hunted or killed, unfortunately. But old hunting records show some specimens that were up to 100 feet long and 200,000 pounds. And this is a cool video from Gillis Delhay, and this is called All Rorqual Whales Species, and it breaks them down. So modern whale hunting techniques have improved. Unfortunately, one of the ways that makes it easier to hunt whales is that small boats can even hunt a very large whale by injecting air into them to make them float so they can just tow it home. And they've also developed like faster boats for hunting and better processing on a ship. So whale hunting is still, unfortunately, a really big business. This is an infographic that goes over like how many some of these marine mammals we have left, and other things are on here too, like green sea turtle. But I want to point out the vaquita, which we are not talking about in this session, but you should definitely look up information. This is a whale where there are only 10, as at the time of the making of this video, there are only 10 of them left in the world, and they are down in Mexico, but they are a very tiny little whale called the vaquita. Okay, so gray whales, only the Eastern Pacific population still survives. They migrate all the way from the Bering Strait to Bering Sea to give birth off of Baja California. They are sometimes called the mossback whales because of how many barnacles are on their backs. And specifically, this is funny, not funny, there's actually a whole species of barnacles that can only live on the gray whale. That's the only place that they can live. So, of the toothed whales, we're going to talk about sperm whales. So, sperm whales eat a lot of squid and fish. And when they eat that squid, the squid has a beak inside of it. And that beak is not easily like digested by anything. So, the beaks collect in the digestive system of the sperm whales. And that will eventually come out as excrement from the whale, but sometimes it actually collects in this thing called ambergris. And ambergris is found in the digestive tract of the sperm whales. It's highly valued for perfumes. Like, I think it's actually valued compared to gold is really, really high. These animals are polygynous, where they mate with multiple females. On the top of sperm whales, they actually have this spermaceti organ, which for the whales is actually used for echolocation. It's important for that. And it immediately hardens. This oily gland immediately will get hard when the whale comes to the air. But this oil was highly prized by whales by whalers because it could be used as like a skin cream and sold as like a lotion. So it was very expensive. So I say just leave that spermaceti alone. Let the whale use it for echolocation. Another toothed whale are the white whales, the beluga whales, which got their names from a Russian word for white. They actually live in small groups. They make a lot of sounds. You'll notice they can move their heads quite a bit because their vertebrae isn't fused to there. So they can move their head up and down, side to side, and they will do that a lot. They live in the northern polar seas. Their main predators are killer whales and polar bears. Polar bears will wait till they come up for some air and then grab them out of the water. They give birth in warmer, shallow water at the mouths of rivers. This is a cool deep marine scenes video facts on the beluga whale. So another toothed whale that some people think don't even believe exists are the narwhals, and they're closely related to the belugas. Interesting that they're in the toothed whales category, but really their tooth is just some two tooth buds that they have at birth. With the females, the tooth buds never developed into anything, but the males, just the left tooth bud, just the left one, will push out and form this whole tusk that sticks off of them. So just males, just the left tooth bud. Some males will actually have their right tooth bud also grow, though, some of them, so they will have two of these. And Eskimos will still hunt these animals, and they kill the narwhals for their nutritious skin. So these tusks have a lot of nerve endings in them, and they can really feel a lot. There's been different scientific research that has shown that narwhals will use these tooth buds for gathering prey and fish, and for various reasons, like to flex for females for mating. So this is a video from National Geographic Wild on narwhals that I recommend. So narwhals were also, I need to say it, were originally hunted because their tusks and widely hunted. They were pulling off their tusks and saying that it was a unicorn horn, and people were believing that and buying them in huge numbers. So another toothed whale are the porpoises. The porpoises are named after that because it means pig body. So they look a whole lot like dolphins because they're related to dolphins, but they don't have that front beak like a dolphin has. So harbor porpoises are actually highly intelligent. They're thought to be smarter than orcas, dolphins, and pilot whales. They're only 3 to 7 feet long and about 100 pounds. This is a video on them called All Porpoise Species that I recommend you check out. Interesting, of this group, Dall's porpoise might be the first animal or animal that we know of that was ever protected by law. So in 1098 in Normandy, people were eating them as a delicacy, and they could see that they were running out, and they wanted to preserve the Dall's porpoise, so they actually became protected by law that you could not catch them anymore. So that's been almost 1,000 years that the Dall's porpoise has been under protection. Very interesting. So the dolphins have a definite beak, and they're known for encircling ships, following ships. They are exceptionally playful. The bottlenose dolphin is often used in research because of how intelligent it is. Orcas, killer whales, are actually a type of dolphin, and they are the largest dolphin out there. The females of the orcas will actually go through menopause. They're one of the only animals that, besides humans, that will go through menopause. And the orcas will stay with their family throughout their life. Their family will actually develop a whole way of talking to each other and different sounds that they make. And they will get to know the language of neighboring orca pods or orca groups. They will only interact with those other families to go mate and breed. But then after the female gets pregnant, she will return to her own pod, raise her baby there, and stay with them throughout their life. So the matriarchal females will live 80 years and lead their whole group that long. The males will only live about 30 years. So the females are way outliving the males. I need to point out these two videos. This is from TED Ed, Inside the Killer Whale Matriarchy, and BBC Earth, Incredible Dolphin Moments. Both of those I recommend that you check out. So with echolocation, we kind of already hit on it, but the marine mammals have modified ears that can hear a wide range of vibrations. And a lot of populations, like dolphins, will have its own unique songs. And what makes a song versus just some kind of noise? They will have a repeating pattern of different sounds that they will say over and over and over again, that they can distinguish various pods from each other. So this is a video from TED Ed, Why Do Whales Sing? And another video from Tracy Rogers, Hearing Underwater. So I talked about it already, but with echolocation, basically there's a melon, usually like fat deposits, where there is sound emitted from various air passages that passes through this space. The fat inside of different marine mammals has about the same density as seawater. So as a sound or vibration moves from the seawater to the fat, the sound doesn't get altered very much when traveling through that fat. So the sound will go out and will hit the object. The sound bounces back and is picked up. It floats through the fat and then to the different nerves in the brain that can pick up the sound. It's very interesting. Some animals, like traveling, like dolphins that are moving around, they will actually move their heads up and down and side to side to scan for different objects. This is a cool video from called Interesting Engineering, How Do Dolphins Use Echolocation? And it's crazy how they can find the range, get their bearings, find out the size, shape, texture, and density. They can actually get a good feeling of the different textures and what you are made of from a distance. Like, notice the difference between your fat and muscles and skeleton, for example. It's very interesting, and I recommend you watch it. It's one of the ways that we need to protect the ocean, is not just from trash or from overfishing, but we actually really need to work to keep our oceans quiet. A large number of these organisms will stop making certain noises and will stop communicating when there is a lot of exterior, like ocean noise. So that completes our video overview on marine mammals. I hope you learned a few new things.